below the level that is what we would consider best practices for sort of local governments globally. And we're also below the level of the policy that we'd recommend to you, which is in that 4% range. So we've got some capacity there in terms of debt versus assessed value. On the next page, we look at debt service.
Before you leave that one,
sir,
you're saying right here,
yep,
that on the right side, that our debt versus assessed value, 4% is the number that 4% of our total overall budget.
Nope. Total. When you look at debt versus the budget, that's actually on the next slide. This is
okay. So it's 4% of our total assessed value.
Correct. That's right.
Okay. Which is where? Where's our assessed value?
Page 3.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead. We'll go back.
All right. We can always circle back with additional details. That ratio. It's like an affordability metric. It kind of looks at generally used. What is your debt burden in terms of the amount that you owe relative to the size of your total tax base? I think where you started your question is on page 13, and that is your annual debt service payments versus your annual expenditures.
Well, that was where I wanted to go.
Yep, that's probably where you're headed. And this is a critical one, that it's a measurement of how many dollars out of your total budget are you using to make debt service payments. And again, what we see here is by virtue of the investment you've made the last couple of years, you're projected to be in the 12 to 14% range. We'd really like to see you in the 12% range, and that's kind of where we've put that red line. Anywhere within 10 to 12 is really viewed as best practices. 15 really is kind of the upper range of where you want to be. So we've purposely kind of put that line at 12% as a goal to try and get there over the next couple of years. Anywhere in the 10 to 15% range is really viewed as being solid and okay, given that you've had to make some investments the last couple of years. So page 14 talks a little more specifically and kind of crystallizes what I've been talking about the last couple of pages, and that's proposed fiscal policy guidelines. As you're thinking about your budget, it's also a good time to be thinking about these policies because they tend to give you a framework for how you're doing and sort of how to measure your various financial metrics, whether it's your fund balance, your debt levels, your revenues and expenditures, those various things. It's a good way to give you a framework to see kind of how you're doing as you set up a budget. And so what we've laid out here are a variety of proposed policies. The goal is not to necessarily have these adopted tonight, just to kind of get you thinking about these. I think the goal is to kind of come back with probably some more formalized document per se that you could think about and adopt. But these are the kind of things that we'd like to see in your policies, those being minimum fund balance levels, sort of relative debt levels, as well as the amount of annual cash flow that you'd be dedicating towards cash funding of capital projects as opposed to borrowing for capital projects. So just some things to be thinking about. We'll be coming back to you at some point with sort of another pass at them, but wanted to kind of put them out in front of you and get you thinking about it. So with that, we'll move on to the second section. So that was sort of history, right? A little bit of perspective, history, etc. Knowing that tonight you're going to see the proposed FY15 budget, we've updated the multi-year financial planning, sort of initial cut at it based on the budget, to kind of give you that sense. Again, the goal being to be thinking multiple years ahead as opposed to just next year. Some of the challenges that are built in, you see them here. I don't think any of them will be new to you. This is something we can play with over time. I think maybe even a work session setting is probably a better setting to work with the nuances of it. But you see some of the challenges, VRS, healthcare expenditures, that's global for everybody. You've got a little bit of debt service increase in the next couple of years. It all gets built in into the multi-year budget, or excuse me, multi-year financial plan. So page 17, thinking about the goals and objectives of the plan. Again, wanting to be thinking about not just the impact of next year, but the impact 5 years out. How are the decisions we're making today impacting multiple years? I think important to note, it's not intended to be a 5-year budget per se, just a tool to be looking towards the future, and focusing on all those various things we thought about in terms of policies, focus on debt levels, focus on unassigned fund balance, those kind of things. Those are all built into the model to be able to look out and see what the impact is. Major assumptions, I'm not going to go line by line here, but the goal here is to be a little bit more on the conservative side than the aggressive side. For the time being, we've built in very minimal revenue growth. Again, not expecting big increases in housing prices, minimal revenue growth. The goal being to err on the more conservative side as opposed to the aggressive side. Utilities for the time being, we've got a bit of a ramped up structure in there that can be played with, that can be toyed with as time goes on. In terms of expenditures, some of the major drivers here clearly on the VRS side of things, the health insurance, those are all built in. All of your existing debt is built in. We haven't included any new capital projects at this point, so everything you see is kind of what you have on the books right now. And you can see some of the other sort of key assumptions that can be toyed with going forward. Which gets you to page 21, the rubber hits the road page. This is what we call our dashboard that gives you all the various sort of critical pieces of the multi-year financial plan. And what we've done here is done our best to mirror the proposed budget you'll see a little bit later. It has the tax rate that's assumed in there. And again, this can be sort of toyed with a little bit going forward as needed. What we really see is if the budget happens exactly as it's proposed this evening, you may need some more pennies in the future, or the equivalent of more pennies in the future. You've got some debt service increasing. I think the goal would be to try to limit that. We're trying to err on the more conservative side so we can kind of see the challenges a couple years out as opposed to being surprised as you do the budget annually. And so with that, the appendix is all the gory details that I won't go through in terms of line by line. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Are you, before we get into that, are you going to give us the second part now, or?
I think the goal is to do the second part under new business.
You'll do the refinancing part as new business?
Sir.
Okay. I hate to wait for the end of the book, so how much money are you going to save us in the second part?
Over the next 10 years is about $1 million.
Now you've got my attention.
Right.
Okay. All right.
We can give you the rest of the details later, but
yeah, we're going to get to that. I just wanted to be able, because we're running a little behind, I just wanted to make sure you got everybody's attention by saving us $1 million later on.
Yep. That presentation's a little shorter.
No problem. All right. Kyle, thank you very much. Outstanding job. That gives us just a general picture of where we are, 5 years, and where we're going to go. And we will ask you, Kyle, and you and/or Courtney to come back again and sit down with us during the work session as we go through the budget, so we can get an idea.
Yep.
But I think the board made a great decision to start looking at 5-year plans, because we basically were saying, what can we do this year, and then we handled next year when it came, and now we can at least see the picture of what's going on. So I think it's a great move. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, that is the end. Dr. Kilo's not here. We're not going to do the CTE presentation. So we're running a little bit behind. Appointments, we do have someone for the Workforce Investment Board. Right? I was still looking at him, so I wasn't on that page. I got it now. Sorry. That's okay. Patricia Green, who wants to serve on the Bay Consortium Board. I don't know who identified her, but is that someone that the board would like to have appointed to the Workforce Investment Board? Patricia Green has indicated her willingness to serve. She works at Goodwill. Is that a good choice? Motion would be in order?
I'll make a motion we accept
Patricia Green.
Patricia Green.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. I'm going to defer the BZA until next meeting. Consent agenda, we pulled agenda item F off. Any other questions, discussions? I want to talk about G. G is a deferral for the sports complex.
You want to pull it, Mr. Chairman?
I'd like to just discuss. So A through E,
Okay.
any problems with A through E? If not, a motion would be in order.
I make a motion that we approve items A through E on the consent agenda.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Taylor. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item F we pulled at the county administrator's request. G is request for a deferral of the public hearing for the Virginia Sports Complex. But in our comments, they're requesting a deferral of 9 months.
Up to 9 months, yes, sir.
Well, I think that seems a little lenient and long since it's already been 2 years at least.
If you remember, the board authorized an expedited public hearing for this request based upon some purchase negotiations with another entity.
And since that didn't happen, here we are now.
Yes, sir.
Is 9 months? I mean, we can defer it 3 months, and then at the end of that 3 months say, okay, we may defer it a little bit longer, right?
Yes, sir.
I think 9 months just sends like a I don't care message, and I care, so I think we need to.
I agree, Mr. Chairman, but I have to go back to the discussion about having expedited special exceptions. So when all of this is done, I think we need to go back and talk about the purpose of special exceptions. But this is one solid case that we should not have held a special exception. Because it comes back to
The expedited hearing.
the
Right.
expedited hearing, because it comes back again. Here we are now saying, well, they're asking for, well, now I need 9 months, and nothing occurred from the first portion.
Well, the expedited
So-
one was because they had a potential
I
buyer,
understand, that's right.
and that fell through. So had that buyer made the purchase, they would have wanted the expedited hearing, and we would have gotten it. I mean, you're exactly right, and we need to have a discussion about the expedited hearing process, and we should do that. So
But I agree with you, I think 9 months is too long, I think we should say 3 months and be done with it.
all right, is that a motion?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
They are asking to amend the proffers concerning the roadway. or
They are
expectations?
requesting an amendment to the special exception dealing with utility connections and the roadway.
Because we gave them a time limit, they had to do both.
Right.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct? And they're wanting to extend that time frame?
Yes, sir. Economic Development was working with the applicant on funding to facilitate the improvements.
I know, 2 years
That
ago.
fell through. Then the new owner, Prospect, became available. And I think, to speak to your point, the Planning Commission had those similar concerns and recommended, I think, no modification.
Yeah. And I guess that is my question and my point, is the fact that, first of all, like, and I'm not sure if Mr. Wilson is still here. or
You're
if
already
he's
out
left.
of compliance. He's on the corner.
As to, what are we getting out of the facility, to be quite honest? I know they send all of their people that come and stay and play, and they send them to Ashland or send them to Hanover County to stay. Very few people, I think, stay in hotels in Caroline. So my question is, what do we benefit? We said to them in the very beginning that you have a certain length of time in order to pave the road, number one, and number two, to hook onto the county's sewer system. The county ran water, as well as I remember, to hook them up to, and they had to hook up the sewer. So.
And the amount of money that they're spending in pump and haul is almost the amount that
Absolutely.
would cover
Absolutely.
connection to the county sewer.
But those same people are still not involved.
Yeah, they are.
It is owned by Mr. Radvani.
But all of the people involved, still involved, that we spoke with 2 years ago.
Yes, sir.
I didn't realize that. I thought
I think the positive that we recently have heard from them is they have expressed an interest to actually now begin the paving of the road. We've been engaged with them in the last week about a guaranteed lending source, going back to the SBA. They are a different owner than the previous owner who defaulted on an SBA loan. So that is a potential that we can find that funding for them. We've started that process. I'm hoping that, since we're talking about 3 months, that will be a moot point ultimately, that they will actually carry out their obligations in the meantime. That is where they're heading. I think your other points are well taken. We have these questions ourselves, and we're hoping that with these improvements, we'll see some marked improvement in their performance as well.
3 months.
That's where we are. Was that a motion? Were there more
It was.
questions?
3 months.
Mr. Underwood made a motion. You made a second?
Yep, that's it.
All right, motion's made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mr. Akers, that we, on agenda item G, that we inform the applicant that we will delay his public hearing for 3 months. And
That's as opposed to 9 months?
As opposed to 9, correct. And we do expect some action in that 3 months, or else our enforcement policies will move up to high gear. Any other discussion?
Yeah, can I just ask Mr. Wilson? I mean, this may be a kind of a dumb question, but is the reason why they haven't done it, is it financial? I mean, as far as, have they expressed to you financial hardship in being able to do this?
Yes, sir, they have.
I will agree with the 3 months, but I think we have to be very careful here in the sense that they have tournaments there on weekends all the time. They have teams. If you go to Giuseppe's, the Timbers, those kids in those tournaments are eating out at our restaurants. To say that they're not staying at our hotels, and I think we know why they're not staying at our hotels. So I think it's a catch-22 for the county in the sense that I understand our frustration, but at the same time they are going out to eat at our restaurants. You see them in the summertime for the tournaments. So to say they're not that, and the last thing we want to see is, I'm not sure we want to see a business out of business in the county.
No, and I've never, and I don't think anybody said they weren't an impact or a benefit to the county. What is, they've made an arrangement with the county.
I understand that.
4 years ago.
Right.
And we have just not enforced that arrangement.
Right, and I understand that.
And it's...
Other point is the fact that I understand what Mr. Black was talking about the hotels in the county not being up to. However, I do see that the Comfort Inn has now gotten their franchise back or something, so it is now Comfort Inn again. So evidently they had to improve their hotel in order to get that recertified. So we should let them also know that we expect you to send some people to our hotel.
Mrs. Beard is making those points almost every day.
Yes.
Thank you.
End of discussion. All in favor of the motion to have a 3-month extension, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. That takes care of the consent agenda, and we are... I thought you were pulling F. You said pull F. All right, agenda item F, the county administrator and the attorney are saying we need action. So on agenda item F, we're pulling it off of consent, and we are going to ask that all bids be rejected because only one bid was compliant, so they have to have more than one. Is that what you're saying? That's what you're saying.
We had problems with the bids and the bid specifications.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to phrase it only one was compliant.
But we're not comfortable with the bid process. We're going to restructure what was done.
Mr. Cully would like to redo the bids for the Sheriff's Office, tactical rifles and accessories. So we need a motion to that effect to give him a chance to do that.
So
Motion.
moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mr. Seeley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. We are 15 minutes behind. We're going to take a quick, real Earth time 15-minute break for a dinner break for some of us who haven't had dinner, and we will be back at 8 o'clock. Yeah, that clock's wrong. We'll be back at 8 o'clock. We'll do public comments and then go right into the public hearing that supposed to start at 7:35 or 7:30, excuse me. So we will stand adjourned for a moment. All right, we will reconvene. And we are on the public comment section of our agenda. So this is different from the public hearing. At the public comment section, anyone who would like to address the board on any matter that's not a public hearing may feel free to do so. So at this time, I will declare the public comment section to be open. And anyone who would like to speak to the board on any subject that's not a public hearing, please feel free to do so. When you come forward, state your name and your voting district, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Michelle Quello, and I live in the Bowling Green District. My daughter attends 2nd grade at Bowling Green Elementary, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about over-testing that is currently happening in our school system. I've spoken to the school board 2 times and have not gotten the results that I believe are necessary for my child. I'd like to take a moment and give you an insight of what is happening to our children at the elementary school level. My 7-year-old child tested for 4 weeks out of the first 10 weeks of school. My child lost out on 4 weeks of instruction. During these 4 weeks of testing, the 2nd graders at Bowling Green Elementary School were given 5 standardized assessment tests to evaluate their reading level. These assessments were PALS, mandated by the state and should be used to evaluate if a child is on grade level. Reading Benchmark, mandated by central office. Fontness and Pinnell, mandated by central office. Star Reading, mandated by central office and is used to measure where a student ranks on a national level. This test does not correlate with the Virginia SOLs. It is a norm reference test. The Virginia SOL tests are standardized tests, and this county pays to use this test. Common Assessment, that's mandated by central office. They were also given 4 standardized assessments tests to evaluate their math level. These tests were the Math Benchmark, which is mandated by central office, Math Exemplars, which is mandated by central office, and Star Math, which is mandated by central office and used to measure where a student ranks on a national level. This test does not correlate with Virginia SOLs. It is a norm reference test. The Virginia SOL tests are standardized tests, and the county pays to use this testing program. These tests do not include the end-of-unit tests that students take when they complete a unit in a core subject. During the second 9 weeks, my child tested for 3 weeks. She took a reading achievement test the week before Christmas break. The first test was only used as a baseline. The reading achievement test is taken several times during the year and must be passed once in order to move to 3rd grade. Once the test is passed, the child is opted out of the other testing times. This test is mandated by central office. She took the PALS test when she returned to school after Christmas break. The PALS test is a state-mandated test that we give in order to receive federal money from the government as part of a reading readiness program. The test should be sufficient enough to tell if a child is on grade level. The week after PALS, she took the benchmark test. Benchmark tests are mandated by central office. The tests are made up by a committee and given to the teacher the day of the test. I'm astonished that we are administering 5 different standardized reading placement tests during 9 weeks. I believe 1 reading assessment test given at the beginning of the year is enough to place a child in the appropriate reading group. The teachers monitor each child's progress every day through reading groups and intercede if a child is in need or their needs are not being met. The teachers are constantly evaluating each student's progress in reading. There's no need for a laundry list of standardized reading placement tests in 9 weeks. I would rather my child be working on reading than taking unneeded standardized reading placement tests. that don't actually work on her reading skills or evaluate what she has been taught in the 9 weeks. Another point that baffles my mind is the fact that we're giving 4 math standardized assessment tests that evaluate a child's math level. These tests are not end-of-the-unit math tests. These are county and national evaluation tests.
Ms. Coelho, I'm going to ask you to summarize, please.
We are testing too much in Caroline County. We are collecting data that we're not using, and we're not educating our students. And that is it.
Excellent summary. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? I'm going to address that when we're done.
My name is Brian Morgan. I'm from the Madison District. I'd just like to follow up to the previous speaker. I don't necessarily have a problem with the standardized testing. I think, however, the county might want to look at their testing processes. It appears that a lot of those 4 weeks are spent where teachers are one-on-one testing with children. So rather than just giving these tests, there's a lot of hand-holding through the process, and I think that's taking away from the population and the students. So I would recommend looking into the actual testing procedures and processes as opposed to how many tests are being taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on any subject that is not a public hearing? Mrs. Lambert, if you will state your name and voting district.
Karen Lambert, Reedy Church. I'm here again asking you to reconsider or give further explanation to the determination made by Mr. Fincham that allows the Evolution Driving School to hold both its school and its open test and tune at the Meadow Event Park. Mr. Fincham stated while an autocross race itself is not a permissible use, a school of autocross racing falls under educational programming. My problem with this falls on a couple of fronts. The non-allowance of motorized racing was an item held out to the residents to protect them from the noise and associated problems of racing. Calling something a school of racing does not make the noise or problems any less for those residents. I understand the difference between an illegal item and an item that's not permitted, but I think Major Moser might find a problem with an organic pot growing school holding its educational programming down there. So if an event is not allowed, if it's not a permissible event, I don't see how making, just because you say it's a school of, that it makes it a permissible event. Secondly, the open test and tune this time comes on Saturday, a day before the EVO school. Anyone with $135 in a car can come and put the pedal to the metal. There is no instruction, no classes. You don't have to attend the school the following day. You just get to run your heats like a regular day of racing. Again, I'd just like to be explained to me how that this in any way would constitute an educational program. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Lambert. Is there anyone else who would like to speak as part of public comments? Is there anyone else who would like to speak as part of public comments? Is there anyone else who would like to speak as part of public comments? Hearing none, we will declare public comment section to be closed. For Mrs. Lambert and the driving school, we are going to have addressed that to some degree in our agenda, item 6, when we get to that. And for Ms. Coelho and Mr. Morgan, we appreciate your position with regard to testing, but the reality is the Board of Supervisors really has absolutely no control over the school system and what they do. We will be meeting with them to discuss the budget on the 25th, and I will personally pass your message along to them. But again, the school board is responsible for all of that. So it's, I mean, even if we said we totally agree with you, you're exactly right, which you probably are, we have no control over that. So it is a school board issue, and we will mention that to the school board when we meet with them again. Okay? That takes care of the public comment. Mr. Fincham, public hearing, agenda item number 4 is a request of rezoning from B1 business to R2 medium density residential. I didn't hear you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your first public hearing tonight is RZ 07-2013. Hardeep Dillon, owner, NADS Properties applicant, is requesting a rezoning from B1 business with no specified density to R2 medium density residential with a density of 0.1 dwelling units per acre on tax map 56C-9-2 containing approximately 1.47 acres. The property is located at 15471 Antioch Road, Milford, in the Mattaponi voting district. The proposed use is a 5-unit apartment building. The 2030 comprehensive plan identifies this area as being located in the Bowling Green Milford community planning area with a designation of planned development. The applicant is requesting a rezoning to R2 residential to allow a 5-unit apartment complex to be built in what was the old Blatt store. Access would be provided to both the first and second floor units. Staff has received comments from various agencies and departments regarding the rezoning request. The property does qualify for service via a drain field, and the health department has approved the drain field for the 5 apartment units. While health department approval has been granted, the Board of Supervisors would also have to approve the use of the drain field for 2 or more dwelling units in accordance with your sewage handling and disposal regulations, which does require special approval from the Board of Supervisors. VDOT would require their standard commercial entrance permit, and parking would be required as part of the site plan for 10 parking spaces on site. The comprehensive plan designates this area as planned development. However, rezoning to R2 is not typically considered the planned development designation. Planned developments typically refer to larger scale development projects that comprehensively speak to the residential and commercial development in an area. The applicant has submitted and executed a proffer statement which contains a number of proffers related to the development. The Planning Commission held its public hearing and had a number of questions related to the application. The Commission ultimately did recommend approval of the rezoning request to the board by a vote of 3-1. At the public hearing at the Planning Commission, while there were a number of people in attendance, there were no public comments at the Commission. I believe you've also received a letter from outlining concerns related to the rezoning that have been forwarded to you.
Are you referring to the anonymous letter that the board received?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I did not give that any credence since it wasn't signed. And I think the board has that policy, or at least intent before, that anonymous letters carry very little weight.
I understand.
But yes, we did receive it. Was that it, Mr. Fincham?
Yes, sir.
Any questions of Mr. Fincham at this time? Board members? Mr. Taylor?
You said the vote was 3-1. Were the other members not present for that meeting, or?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
No other questions? Thank you again, Mr. Fincham. We will open the public hearing, listen to the comments, and then if the board has questions again of Mr. Fincham or the applicant, we will do that. So we'll now declare the public hearing for RZ 07-2013 to be open. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? And when you come forward again, just state your name, your voting district, and you'll have 3 minutes.
All right.
Mr.
I'm
Beasley?
Bobby Beasley from the Mattapanai District. I just had a couple of questions. I own a piece of property right across the road from us. One is, how is this going to affect my property down the road? Because, you know, you had so much of that business on one side. The old bank building was a bank, naturally. That's changed. Now this building is going to probably maybe change. All that stuff from the store all the way down to Black Chevrolet was all business at one time, except for that one house that Ms. Campbell lived in years ago. And same thing on the other side of the road. From the depot all the way down to the old Johnny Oil Company was business. True, a lot of that's dilapidated, need to be fixed up, made something out of it instead of sitting there in ruin. So that's my first question. The second one is, skip all the mumbo jumbo and the zoning laws and all that. Tell me what the maximum number of people are going to be able to live in this building. You know, because you say 5 apartments, but is that 20 people to an apartment, or 4 people, or what? Because you know the problems we've had in the past.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will try to answer those when we're done with all the public comment. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? If you would, sir, please come forward, state your name, voting district.
Nomiro Antônio da Silva, I believe mine is a Bowling Green district, my vote card.
Okay.
So, actually, I know business for a long time, so I'm part of this project, and when to me is I'm very concerned about what Mr. Billy said too, is but that's why I came into the picture, is become partner with Mr. Dillon, is because I am also own a lot of properties, and I'm very picky who's going to live in the properties. But one thing that interests me of this property, see a SS building of a 225.90 now make this building worth $1 million. There's, I think, is a money come for the bring to the county, and we are partnership here. We need you guys, you need us. Without people, we cannot make money, you know. And this building is so close to the schools. You know, a good family always looking for a place to raise their kids. And the reason I moved close to Bowling Green area was because my son, every time took the bus to come to the school, Caroline County School, he vomit. So, because it took so long to get to the school. That's why we moved so close to the school. And I think is they have a lot of buildings that right now is empty. You know, used to be 3 banks right here in Bowling Green. Now it's only 1. You know, Mr. Black, he brought if that was very interesting. I seen that what I said that before. You know, if you come a new business, we're afraid to make gonna fail. And I think if you bring these apartments, is a kind of business that will bring the revenue for the county, and people be happy to come and live in those apartments. And I personally, I sent you guys the code compliance review. They talk about how many people can live on apartments. Also on the engineer plans, also they talk about that too. So specifications of how many people they can live there on apartments. So I try to do everything by the book. I try to do, you know, is what you guys requirements are. What trying to fulfill those requirements are. So that's my job, and I want to keep that in mind to, you know, to make sure this fulfilled, you know, is this project. Thank you.
But before you go, you said you sent some information to the county.
Yes.
Did you send that to the planning department?
Yes, I went to Angelina Pitts.
Angelina Pitts, okay.
And I said, Angelina, when the dealer signed a piece of paper, you guys required to bring the code compliance review.
Okay.
So I got as an engineer guy to do that.
Okay.
And then I brought the engineer plan.
That was the only thing I needed.
Right.
Okay, so that went to the planning department, and I don't know what happened. We didn't get that? We got that? But that wasn't in our packet. That's what I'm saying. Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter?
My name is Bert Chenault from the Bowling Green District. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I've known Mr. Dillon for many years, and I don't guess y'all know too much about business. But as a farmer, 40 years ago, we could go out and pick up 40 hands for digging sweet potatoes. It's done got so you can't find a man around. But since Mr. Dillon has been down at Milford, we've been able to go down there and get help that you couldn't find nowhere else, and you can't find it in the county. I don't care where you go. So I would like to recommend Mr. Dillon that this could be, if this is what he wants, I do feel like that it'd be an asset to the county. You certainly get more taxes out of it. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? Hearing none, the public hearing is declared closed. Mr. Fincham, would you come and help answer a couple of questions? The first one, I'm not sure we can answer with Mr. Beasley about how this affects his property. I have to get some more information from him specifically. But the number of people that could live there?
Typically, 5 apartments, 2 bedrooms per apartments for a total of 10 bedrooms. Typically, the health department approval is based upon 2 people per bedroom.
5 apartments with 2 bedrooms each?
Yes, sir.
So that's 10 bedrooms total, 2 people per bedroom, 20 people?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have not found anything that further restricts that. So I'm going typical BDH figures,
okay,
as I recall them.
I think that was the only questions I had from public comments. We're going to do board questions now.
Okay.
You ready? Mr. Taylor, you ready?
Yeah, right. I just had a couple. That question, but the other question I have is a follow-up to how are you going to monitor that? How will you know that there are not 5 people in each bedroom?
That's a typical issue we have, Mr. Taylor, and I think we've had multiple complaints over the years. Mr. Whiteman has gone down and inspected the properties to ensure that they're compliant with the code and our regulations. Unless you get, for example, a sheriff's department complaint where they go down there and investigate an alleged incident, or we get a complaint from within the structure itself, such as a resident or immediately abutting property owner who's alleging damage, it's very difficult to go in and actually investigate how many people are in a structure. Kevin, did I have that?
Okay. But does the applicant have other facilities within the area that are being?
The applicant owns multiple properties in the area.
And does he meet those? Does those properties meet the codes? Have you had issues regarding those?
I'm going to ask Kevin to address that question because he's been down multiple times inspecting properties.
And while you're here, Mr. Whiteman,